Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to be a continuation of a previous lesson from the 39th chapter in the book of Job. The 39th chapter is the second chapter of Yahweh's first discourse. We took it all the way up until the 18th verse. We're going to take this from 19 to 30, and then there's a brief intermediate, 5-verse intermediary period between his first and second and final discourse, and that's a brief dialogue between him and Job. To review, he forcefully condescends in the form of a whirlwind beginning in the 38th chapter and proceeds to ask a series of rhetorical questions that just expose the limitations of human knowledge and the depths of our ignorance. He proceeds from a cosmological the sea, everything, and then he moves to meteorological, the constellations in the sky, the stars. Where were you? Do you command them? Do you control them? Did you create them? I did. So who are you? If you cannot explain or comprehend or control my creative order, then who are you to question my moral judgments? And then the tail end of the 38th, he moves to the animal kingdoms, the life forms on the earth. He references in the 18 verses we cover undomesticated beasts. So the fact that there are some beasts in nature that mankind cannot dominate or subjugate or domesticate or discipline. They're no threat or danger to us, but that just exposes our own impotence. So all these things, he begins with wild mountain goats. How long does it take them to give birth? What month? Where do they go? What do they do? He is addressing a pre-scientific people, and in our age of instant information, we can look up how long is it. The number of months that it takes a wild mountain goat to reproduce, but the fact that we do not instantly know any of these questions, and there are no easy answers, and just the rapid fire succession of these questions. Then the next animal he moves on to is a wild donkey. This is distinct from a domesticated donkey. Who let the wild donkey free? Who loosed its bonds? Who loosed the bonds of the wild donkey? Whose home I have made in the desert, in the salt land, his dwelling. The answer is in the way that it is phrased. I made it. So he creates everything owes its own. He's the one who made the wild donkey free. He's the one who made it beyond humanity's capacity to tame or domesticate or control. These are donkeys that cannot be subjugated by us for productive purposes, and that's just part of his sovereign design. And it dwells in the desert and not in a coop or a farm, as do domesticated donkeys. He laughs at the commotion of the city and does not hear the shouts of the driver. He proceeds from questions to observations, and in the 13th through 18th verse, he gives a lengthy observation, so intermixed and intermingled in ways that are not in the there are some observations in the 38th chapter. He laughs at the range of the mountains as his pasture, and he searches for all that is green. This is his home. This is his habitat. This is where God placed him, the desert and the mountains and all these places, and this is where it is geared to survive. This is where it lives. Then he moves on to a wild ox, also distinct from a domesticated ox. There are the wild oxes, and now it's extinct species, which was rare even in antiquity, but it is excepting the elephant and the rhinoceros. It is the most impressive beast as measured by sheer strength. But we're gonna finish this review just with verses 13 through 18. These are observations. He asked no questions about the ostrich. The wings of the ostrich flap joyously, but they are not the pinions and plumage of a stork. A stork has wide wings. They can soar across the sky, soar across the air. They have markedly distinct wings. All that an ostrich wings can do is flap. They are a bird that cannot fly, yet they are faster than the horse. So there is irony in the created order, and that's the way he made it. She leaves her eggs on the ground and warms them in the dust, and she forgets that a foot might crush them or a wild beast tread on them. So this eventually leads up to an ostrich is identified by Yahweh as an animal lacking in wisdom, but he looks over fools, drunks and fools, as the old adage goes. So of course it would be foolish if his nature was not any other way. The ostrich is distinct from most birds. They have their eggs in the protective fold of their wings, but the ostrich is strutting about to and fro. She treats her young harshly as if not hers. Her toil is in vain without fear, because Eloah has made her forget wisdom and did not endow her with understanding. So the maternal instinct that is alive and well throughout the animal kingdom just isn't there. But in spite of this, and in spite of their own strategic stupidity of leaving their eggs unprotected, but they're just they only convey the appearance of an unprotected egg. That's in fact how they try to goad lure animals for them to eat, by making it appear that their young are being vulnerable to eat. But in any case, the wise one, the omniscient one, declares it beasts, certain animals. The serpent was crafty, described in Genesis 3, but that word is more accurately translated as intelligent, and we are told to be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves in Matthew's 10:6. But in spite of its lack of understanding, all these animal inferior life forms flourish and survive and replenish the earth, and have a definite purpose in his creative order. When she lifts herself up high, she laughs at the horse and its rider. That's just a way of saying that an ostrich is a speedier animal on foot than is a horse. And the horse forms, where we're going to take off the lesson, is not a farm horse, but a war horse. But even you cannot mount on an ostrich in battlefield because a horse is big enough, but he uses war imagery, and this marks the 19th verse lesson itself, 39th chapter, book of Job. Have you given the horse strength? Have you covered the neck with the mane? A horse is a strong animal. It is also a fast animal, but it is also impressively muscular. They are able to run far and fast because they are so strong. But the source of their strength, obviously the uncaused cause of all life and all movement, is the one who gave the horse its strength and endowed all the life forms with all their faculties, capacities, and appetites. And the mane is just the hair, which goes over where the neck usually is. Horses, you can picture one, their hair goes, they have a streak of hair which is distinct from the hair which surrounds their epidermis, a mane. Would you make him leap like a locust? His splendid snorting is frightened. Locust is another animal frequently appearing in Bible with warlike or famine or plague imagery. It is a beast of destruction, but they are able to... Now, locusts do not leap, but I believe they fly, but they fly in such a manner that suggests a leap. It's just an instant leap. And the horse who runs on foot is able to leap. Horses can hurdle over fences, certain ones, and just the snorting, the sound is just the sheer frightening of it, the sheer fear-inspiring sensation that the snorting conveys is communicated in the second, and the observation after the question. He paws in the valley and rejoices in strength. He gallops in the clash of arms. War horses are able to do what they do because they are strong. They are able to run full speed, full charge ahead without fear. They have to know that they're going into weapons and people that can harm them, but they go anyway. They are designed for the purpose of ancient and pre-modern warfare. The cavalry troops were supplied by horses, and it was designed and domesticated to do the things that it uniquely can do. So of the animals that have been discussed thus far, the war horse, which is an impressive beast in itself, but it is distinct in that we are able to domesticate it and channel, control it, and contain its energies for our purposes and manipulate it to serve functions that they uniquely can do that we cannot. So, and horses appear and abound in agricultural settings. Horses, proliferate farms as well as battlefields. He laughs at fear and is not frightened, nor does he turn back from the sword. Horses cannot, no animal can, except human, can laugh, but he's just looking fear dead square in the eye, and if he could laugh, he would. That's what he's saying there. He is not, the only thing that we have to fear is fear itself, FDR, at fear and is not frightened. So a horse, we have to look at fear and not be frightened by it, much as a horse can look death square in the eye and straight in the face and not run away, does not retreat even though they see the weapons that can harm them ahead of them. They go full speed ahead because they are under the command and control of the warrior who wields them. The quiver rattles against him in the glittering spear and lance. These are shiny but prickly objects, certainly. Quivers are bows and arrows. When held a quiver, that was another danger that many horses were just as likely as the humans to get hit by arrows in the ancient warfare, and the spears and the lance. This gave infantry a strategic advantage that would neutralize the potency of horses, because a sword-wielding infantryman is no match. The only way that they can do that is if they line in formation and keep their spears longer than the horses are tall, and that is one way. And lances are they were ancient and they were around in the Middle Ages too. People lanced when they jousted. He eats up the ground with fierceness and rage, and he does not stand still when the ram's horn sounds. Even though every instinct in an animal's body would tell them that, danger, Will Robinson, the horse, he does not even think about it. He just goes on instinctively driven. He is driven and determined to do so. So the ram's horn, they have to recognize that, a war horse, seldom would be on their first battle. They would know what they were getting into, and they knew that they were tempting their own mortality, but they are attracted and lured to the sound and the smell, we read, of battle in the next verse. At the blast of the ram's horn, he says, "Aha!" And from afar he smells the battle, the thunder of commanders and shouting. So it's a welcome invitation. It's a green light to go when he hears the ram horn. That's his cue to march into battle, full speed ahead, full juggernaut. And he lives for battle. He can smell the battle from a mile away and then some. He lives for battle, and he knows what he is going to. He knows what he is walking into. They know what they're preparing for. And all the noise of all the armies, that does not frighten them. Now, an army, 10,000 men in armor and steel weapons, that makes a fearsome noise to behold and a spectacle that is intimidating. But the war horse welcomes and walks right into that. Does the hawk fly by your wisdom, spreading its wings towards the south? This is the next animal in nature, the hawk. Now, the hawks wouldn't have been resident in ancient Palestine, although they did migrate there during the winter, I believe, but they did not live there. This was their seasonal cycle, and it would have demanded a wise designer, a creative architect who could design an animal such as the hawk to fly and soar over the sky. That is because of his wisdom and the direction that it is geared to go. They obey because it is for a wise and perfect design. But Job Job is not the cause of the effect of a bird or a hawk or anything else flying. He is a creative creature the same as the animals, although as a human, and more than that, the most exalted servant in Yahweh's estimation of his own day. Does the eagle mount up at your command and make its nest on high? Eagles are another majestic bird of splendor that soars across the eyes. Eagles are likened to divinity in the ancient Hebrew symbolism, because it's able to soar across the heaven, and its connection to heaven comes with that connotation. But, the eagle, the hawk, these are animals we cannot domesticate or control. We can capture them, but, we cannot make it fly. It flies up because of Yahweh's command. And that's how it makes its nest on high, because he designed them that way to do what they do in order to keep coming and making more of themselves. It dwells on the rock and lodges on the crag of the rock and the stronghold. This is a dwelling place. This is where some birds dwell on rocks, where they are less vulnerable. But they are not. These are birds of predator, not birds of prey. These are hunting. We read in the next verse. From there it searches out the prey. Its eyes see it from afar. Birds do have splendid eyesight. Now, most animals, such as dogs and several others, can only see black and white. They have very limited eyesight, very limited depth perception. Most animals get around through the sense of smell and hearing, but the birds and humans do have acute eye capacity. So a bird has to see far when it soars from the sky to see much as a horse looks and smells and lives for the battle, so too does a hawk or an eagle searching out its prey just from the heights of the heavens demand excellent vision and eyesight. And its young ones suck up blood, and where the slain are, there it is. These would have been more appropriate vultures. These are the carnivorous ones, the ones who feast on the flesh of dead, decaying, and rotting animal life forms. They are bloodsuckers, and they gravitate, and they come in gangs. So it's never one vulture. When the vultures come, it's always plural, and that's usually a sign and symbol of judgment and doom. So this is a fitting enough appropriate ending to his first discourse. Now we're going to move into the intermediary phase. We hear from two discourses from Yahweh, from the 38th through the 39th. That's the first one. And then from chapter 40, verse 6, all the way till 41, and then there's a similar sequence to what we're going to cover in the early 42nd chapter. 40th chapter, first verse. And Yahweh answered Job and said, Job wasn't the only one present, but he is the targeted focus of his attention, and he's answering. He just asked the questions, and Job could not answer any of them, so Yahweh has to answer Job, but Job wouldn't have. But we would have been surrounded by people. There was, in addition to the gentleman we heard from, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, and also Elihu, there would have been other spectators, but he's specifically singling out Job, and he's telling him, he asked him another question, two more, or actually one, and then an imperative, an ultimatum. Should a reprover contend with El Shaddai? Let him who reproves Eloah answer. Eloah is a perfect, Elohim, Eloah is a perfect being, so he does not need reproof. He is, we can criticize him, but to no avail. We have no qualifications or leverage to issue any criticisms or judgment about anything that transpires in his universe. So if Job is unable to explain or answer any of these rhetorical questions that are thrown at him in rapid fire succession, he was not there at the foundation of the earth, and his wisdom does not make the hawk fly. So who is he to reprove Elohai? And he's giving him an opportunity to answer for himself. And at this invitation, Job finally does speak. And Job answered Yahweh and said, "See, I am insignificant. What would I answer you? I lay my hand over my mouth." Job, this was his persistent and frequent and fervent prayer to have an audience, to be vindicated by Yahweh. And, in as early as the 9th chapter, he says that he would be tongue-tied. Even if I were blameless, my own words would condemn me in such a situation as he is in now. But eventually he gathers momentum. In the 13th chapter, he prays for what is happening right now. And as the narrative unfolds and progresses, we witness an increasing presumptiveness of Job. Eventually he says that he would approach him like a prince, but here he is condescending to the lowest of the low. I am insignificant, I am worm. This mimics the ethos of what Abraham does in his intercessory prayer for Sodom and Gomorrah in the 18th chapter of Genesis. But the awareness of your own insignificance and your own inability and own inadequacy is a natural and normal response when one is confronted with the very presence of divinity. Once we see him in all his splendor, we will look at ourselves and we'll be aware of how sinful we are, how low, how weak, how stupid, how foolish we are, all these things. We will cease to have any exalted estimation of ourselves once we, by the sheer proximity of his presence. And so the same thing that Job earlier requested that his comforters, misleadingly named, do, put their hands over their mouth, don't say anything, because it's better to hold your tongue and than to say something foolish. Proverbs 17:28. Once I have spoken, but I have no answer, and twice, but I say no more. Job is not going to make the same mistake 3 times. He maybe did it once, he maybe did it twice. He's spoken without knowledge. Now he has the record set straight. Yahweh effectively communicated the qualitative chasm which exists between his omnipotence, his omniscience, and our finite faculties and abilities and capacities and everything else. So Job is tongue-tied, he is bereft, he spoke from the heart, but he did not have all the answers. That much is plain. So who is he to make sense of why, who is he to charge Yahweh of being unjust, because he was a just man and he did nothing to deserve it. Yet it was for a greater purpose, though the narrative does not indicate that Job is made privy to it. He is not given an explanation for why this happened to him, but the all-encompassing overwhelmingness of his majesty is sufficient to satisfy any doubt that he had in his mind about. So it is very much a might makes right argument. That's all the time we have for today. We'll pick this up in the 40th chapter sometime soon. Take care until then. See you then. Bye-bye.